Hey folks, hope everybody's having a good weekend. I wanted to do a particular Curblog topic while I guess this was relevant in the fact that I just hit 64 subscribers recently. A lot of that I owe, I think, in part to the episode of Crossover that I did with Drake McHorder from the Game Theory channel. If you haven't checked that out yet, it was a lot of fun. We did a timeline dissection episode of Crossover about all of the different Mega Man series, and it was really fun writing that with him and his artist Kenny. Great experience. So yeah, thanks to him, I got a nice little boost in subscribers over the last couple weeks, and maybe even by the time this comes out, I'll have hit 65. But yeah, while it was happening, I thought, you know what? I thought this might be kind of cool to talk about. So in the past, I have talked about quite a few. I've done quite a few Curblog topics about my experience with my favorite game console, which is the N64. Now, in particular, I'll say if maybe like you're relatively new to listening to these, I would recommend going back and taking a listen to my my old two-part top 10 N64 games Curblog that I did all the way back in like December of last year. It's almost been a whole year since I did that. I can't believe it. Coming up on almost a full year of doing these Curblog videos. But yeah, I would recommend to go checking those out because there's some more in-depth memories about each of the individual favorite games of mine. But for this, I wanted to kind of just recount some, some basic things about just other various memories that I haven't really talked about with, in other Curblogs, just about the system that I love so much because it was really inspiring to me, all the games that were on it and the system itself, really. So my first two games that I got for the N64. Because I got the system during Christmas. I want to say maybe like a year or two after it came out. I can't remember. I used to get systems late, before GameCube, which it's how it went. Wasn't a big deal. But I got Mario 64 and Star Fox 64 as my first two games. And Mario 64, I remember I was still in elementary school at the time, and it's interesting because nowadays, I feel like it's so much easier to just well, then again, I'm not really sure. I don't know what it's like for little kids, but I feel like games are developed in a way that they're not impossible to beat or they're not super, super difficult. But, I'm sure people who grew up with older systems like NES stuff or whatever, and Super Nintendo, even just Sega Genesis, etc., that just sometimes you just have a game that you could just never beat. You could always just get up to a part and then that was it. Prior to this, I played a lot of Super Nintendo games, and Donkey Kong Country, all three of those in that series. I know that I had points where I just couldn't get past a particular level, and that's where I would stop. I think no, you know what? Just in the first one in particular, I just get stuck at various points where I just can't beat this. I can't get past this part. It's too hard. Now I can beat that game in my sleep, basically. But hashtag humble brag. But with Mario 64, jumping back to that, I remember there were points where I really, really couldn't get certain stars. I think I was really stuck on the 75 star door that would lead to the final fight with Bowser for a really long time. I don't think I actually beat Mario 64 until at least a couple of years after I had gotten it, or at least it felt that way anyway. Star Fox 64 was a similar case, actually an even more extreme case, because I loved that game. It was my number 2 top game on my top 10 list that I was linking earlier. And my dad and I loved that game. We used to play it all the time and went through the campaign countless times. And obviously I had beaten the campaign, but I had never finished the entire content of the game. I didn't until only a few years ago when when I got it on the Virtual Console, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get all of the medals for each of the planets and get the amount of score points that are necessary. And it was painstaking. Friends of mine talking to me over Skype at the time I was doing that will recall, but I remember that felt really satisfying to come back to that one over a decade later and finally get all of the extra content that I'd been craving so much, which was a sound test and a really, really poorly made on foot versus mode. So a couple years after that, Rareware was starting to produce a lot of the big N64 games that people remember them for. Diddy Kong Racing, the Banjo series, or all two of them, and Conquer, Donkey Kong 64, etc. And that I'm sure I've gone more in depth with Shady on that. I did a Memories of Rareware Games one with him. I want to do a sequel to that one at some point with hopefully with Musical Mike. Because there's more stuff I didn't talk about with that. But that was a really magical time because that was like, when there was so much mystery about some of these games and all these different kind of secrets hidden within them and things that like even the gaming magazines were kind of investigating and whatnot. And it's funny, I feel like the Rareware games in particular, they made me like dream in N64 levels for a good while. I think that's something I'm sure I also talked about on my my dream-related Kerblog from recently, where oftentimes I would go back to a lot of locations and they were just kind of inspired by like levels from like Banjo-Kazooie or Donkey Kong 64 or Conquer or whatever. They just be rendered in my mind as like a low poly like N64 kind of look. I don't know what it is about. Okay, this I know I haven't said before on another Kerblog or whatever because I say that a lot. Low poly is a look that I think is so charming, but it's a look that I don't think that like indie games are all that enthusiastic about wanting to do. Even Hat in Time, which is a game that I've been helping out of doing casting and voice direction for that. That game it's inspired very much by a lot of the games from N64 that were collectathon platformers, like 3D games. But even so, the graphics like they purposely look better. They're more kind of like around the GameCube sort of area. And then like this sort of antiquated look of pixel art, Super Nintendo and NES sort of stuff. That is timeless and just perpetually retro to people. Low poly stuff just isn't for some reason, and it's a shame because I would love to see a modern day made game in that sort of visual style. Because I don't know, I feel like there's a market for that, and I think it could be interesting. But I don't know, it's not something that people really delve into more. I wonder about that. Maybe that's something that I would like to do if I were to ever develop a game at some point, Yeah, so the Rareware games, those are major sources of inspiration for like secrets and cool shit. I remember also, I think towards the end of my time in elementary school, and right around when I had met Mike Lucas, as a matter of fact, was when Smash Brothers had come out. I don't think I actually talked about my experience with the N64 Smash Brothers on that top 10 list, but yeah, I remember I was really excited about that. I learned who Samus was for the first time. I had never really played a fighting game before. I maybe had played like 2 seconds worth of Street Fighter and had no idea what the hell I was doing. But I remember just struggling and dying constantly trying to play classic mode with Mario for the first time on very easy, and I was still getting my ass kicked and no idea what I was doing. Yeah, eventually, kind of fumbled my way through it and then really got to like it. And I remember, I think in school, Mike Lucas and I even, as I'm sure every kid did at that age, we were like, oh, what if Super Smash Bros. 2 was like this? And we were like, coming up with ideas for it and drawing stuff about it or whatever. And funnily enough, I think many characters from that at the time have gone on now to be playable characters. Some of which not until Brawl and upwards, but still, it's just kind of funny. I mean, I guess it's reasonable conclusions that young, sprightly Nintendo fans could come to after a time. So that was certainly a thing. And I remember even after the GameCube came out, and while I did not have that Nintendo 64 reaction to when I got my system, I was very excited, but that was more of my reaction to when I got the GameCube, because by that point I was just like so excited about like all of the games coming out on that system, and I got a few when it had first come out. But even after that, I still had a really soft spot for N64, and I would constantly still be keeping an eye out for games, because by this point they still had N64 games like in a Blockbuster or whatever. Remember Blockbuster? Remember Blockbuster? It was a good store, and then it stopped. Good, anyway. But yeah, I would still keep an eye out for games, and there were still I think by that point was around the time that I had ended up buying the copy of Mischief Maker for my local Hollywood Video before it got turned into a Blockbuster. I'm dating myself really hard with this Kerblog. But yeah, even when GameCube was like the new big thing at the time, then also PS2, I was still loving N64 games. One example of that, which I'm pretty sure I didn't tell this story on the top 10 list, but I know I mentioned Bomberman 64, The Second Attack. I was big into the Bomberman games on N64, and now I believe I own all of them. There might be one that I don't have, like a Japanese only one or something, but I have Bomberman 64, Bomberman 64 2, and Bomberman Hero. But yeah, Bomberman 64, The Second Attack was a game, one of many that I had rented, because I had rented tons and tons of N64 games constantly just to find other new shit. And there was like there were ones like Buck Bumble where I rented, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with you, goodbye. And then other ones that I'd constantly keep renting over and over again until I beat it, like Mega Man 64 or Mischief Makers. I'd rented Bomberman 64, The Second Attack once, and really, really liked it, but I was bad at it, but I wanted to keep playing it, and then I had to give it back, and then eventually it just vanished, and I just never tracked it down again. So as a child, not having his own bank account or credit card or whatever, finding cool stuff on eBay was very few and far between, and I would make sure to save bothering my parents to consider getting me something from there very, very, very sparingly if it was something that was like really, really important, I knew was super rare. And Bomberman 64, The Second Attack was definitely one of those, and I managed to eventually get a copy of that. I think still in box with the what is it, the instruction manual and everything. They're back home in Long Island with the rest of my collection, but that was very coveted to me, mainly because it had a lot of elemental characters and things, and people know I have a hard on for that. the Celestial Knights or whatever they were called. And yeah, I remember like once I got it, I just like I just beat the shit out of that game. I tried to unlock absolutely everything, and it's funny because, here's something. Here's the last little funny note to go out on. I used to call the Nintendo Power Line a lot, which if anybody doesn't remember what the hell that is, because it was before the internet had everything on it. I used to call the Nintendo Power Line to find out about like a lot of secrets in games, and sometimes I would even talk to like representatives, like ones that you could like speak to directly or whatever, to like ask them about more in-depth stuff. Like I think I remember I asked them about like some of the April Fool's jokes that like Super Mario 128 Central would throw about like, oh, Mario RPG is going to be ported to the Game Boy Advance or whatever, or oh, this secret level in Mario Advance 2, Super Mario World, and like all that dumb shit. But yeah, for Bomberman in particular, I think that was what led me to make the most amount of calls, because I was like, how do I get all these gold cards in Bomberman 64? I can't find them, and the internet is useless to me. Yeah, I think I even checked on GameFAQs or something when like the internet wasn't helping, so I was like trying to figure something out, something like that, whatever. Anyway, but I remember Bomberman 64, The Second Attack, when I had gotten it, I had unlocked like near everything ever, but there were still like these certain things kind of in some of the menus that had like big question marks on them or whatever, and I was like, oh, stuff that I haven't unlocked yet. Ooh, I gotta find out what it is. And I called the Nintendo Power Line, and they were like, we don't know what that is. We don't know what those secrets are. And I'm just like, there's something that even they don't know. So, and I still don't know what some of that stuff is. But so maybe if you guys do, tell me. And I think also on that same note, I'm gonna end here. Leave in the comments below. Do you know what those extra secrets are in Bomberman 64: The Second Attack? I mean, leave in the comments below. What are your fond memories with the N64? Tell me if you had one. Have you played any N64 games on the Virtual Console if you're a younger kid and didn't have one of those? A lot of people my age, apparently that was their first system, was an N64, which is very kind of surprising. But I want to know. Tell me your memories with this system and some of the games with that and everything. I'd be curious. And if you have ideas for future Curblog topics, as always, leave a comment about that or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, whatever you feel like. And that'll do it. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for running down memory lane with me, as always, as I often stroll down there on these. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a great one. Bye.